Welcome back, YouTube. Today we doing my boy Overlord. We're gonna do my boy Overlord some justice. So I have another YouTuber I watch, and he also does review on episodes and why AINZ is doing what he's doing. But we're also gonna do it on how powerful he is as well. So let's check this out. Put on my earphones so I can get all the detail. Oh, he talks very loud.
Wait, but even now, while he's annihilating an entire country, all those innocent deaths are something he's planning to profit from. So, as we go through the cut content for this setup of an episode, you'll slowly come to realize why AINZ is doing what he's doing here. I promise it's not just killing for the sake of killing. There is a reason for AINZ's warpath. Before we get started though, a quick reminder that you can still buy the Succube apparel, and I am streaming on Twitch every week to talk about Overlord. So, you can find both those links down below in the description. Episode 48, Countdown to Extinction.
Actually, y'all check out my links in the
Chapter
description
2 from
too, because I
Volume
post
14
everything
light
about the
novel.
show.
With the kingdom right on the cusp of war, Zenek was worried his father wouldn't be able to make the best decision here. You see, ever since his closest friend was lost in battle, the king's physical well-being was clearly starting to deteriorate. He was rapidly aging in a manner that left him as only skin and bones. So, considering this sudden lack of vitality, Zenek feared his father wouldn't be in the right state of mind to handle this. It was a situation he felt may require some drastic measures, especially when the king started protecting Philip on the basis that he could be innocent. Since many were convinced this whole thing was just a ploy set up by the Sorcerer Kingdom, King Ramposa was adamant about not setting up this risky precedent. You see, for every time a plot was carried out by their undead neighbors, the king didn't want to have to start sacrificing innocents just to appease them. It was an unsustainable method of handling conflict that was just
I just want to make sure they would sit down and close it out.
Zenek was sure his father was failing to see the bigger picture here. Then, with his absolute refusal to become a vassal state either, Zenek knew he'd have his work cut out for him. What he did value from his father's conviction, though, was the respect he commanded from the people he disagreed with. Despite not always seeing eye to eye with the council next to him, each and every minister admired his benevolent nature in extremely high regard. As a king who attracted people who were much better than himself, Zenek was hoping he'd be able to take advantage of that in the future. The thing is, with the king now making decisions that could destroy their very nation, the inevitable plot Zenek would have to use to remove him from power would undoubtedly sever all ties with the people he was hoping to rely on. Then, with his sister being sent off to some remote manor to live with time, when the time did come for Zenek to take his rule, he would neither have his father's magnetism nor his sister's wisdom, both of which were key assets he was hoping to use to make lasting change. So, while Zenek did consider himself to be a superior king to his brother Barbaro, he wasn't so sure that he could do much better anymore. The tools he needed to do so were all but gone now. Now, the final act that showed Zenek his father was unfit was the lack of reasoning as to why Philip's head shouldn't be used as a bargaining chip. Like, even if he was innocent and it was all just a ploy, the life of one noble certainly wasn't worth more than the life of everyone else. But with his father showing zero leeway when it came to this topic, Zenek knew the only way to get past his objections was to usurp him. He was so close to gaining the throne legitimately, yet the very last step of the way required him to take it by force. If he didn't, then it was very likely there wouldn't be any kingdom left for him to rule over after. So, as Zenek considered which ministers and which soldiers to get on his side, that's when the messenger entered with news of Albedo's arrival, leading us to the following meeting with the Sorcerer Kingdom's envoy. Normally, the king wouldn't ever meet an envoy on the same day of their arrival, but considering the severity of the situation, listening to what she had to say was of the utmost priority. Now, the first thing to note about her arrival was the dark pink gown that she was supposed to be wearing here. It was an outfit so out of place for the discussion about to be had, yet no one in the room could doubt it was worn intentionally. As for what signal this dress was supposed to send though, well, that was a message that would be found out shortly. When the king offered his life as an apology next, Zenek was by far the most shocked out of everyone. Not because of the wild offer his father had just made, but instead because of the realization that this was his plan all along. As a king whose job was to put the needs of his kingdom first, that also included situations like these. Situations where the only hope for resolution was the highest level of sincerity offered by the reigning monarch themselves.
Anybody
So, for any normal nation receiving it, an apology like this, along with the head of the king, would undoubtedly be more than enough to settle any matter. If they were to demand more than that, then every other nation on the continent would only ridicule them. But because the nation they were dealing with was the Sorcerer Kingdom, one measly life wasn't enough to appease them. The very notion was enough to cause Albedo to cease all formalities with them. The king didn't realize it until partway through, but the moment he did was the moment he started seeing reality for what it really was. This wasn't a political envoy that he was dealing with, but instead a demon talking down to a human. It didn't matter at all that he was a king, because to her a human was just a human. He was absolutely nothing that deserved a level of respect befitting of that. None. So, once Ramposa saw his situation was futile, the thought did cross his mind to kill this envoy, but an act like that would only alienate every other nation. All the blame would 100% fall on them, and no country would want to help one that killed a messenger.
Yeah, it's really good.
What they could do instead, though, was send word to every other nation of the apology they tried to offer. Perhaps by letting them know that the king's head wasn't enough, the other nations would start to see just how uncooperative their enemy was. Now, in a private conversation with the royal family after, Ramposa did tell Renner and Zenek to run away, but both were well aware that there wasn't anywhere to go. So long as either of them were still alive, the kingdom would continue to live through their bloodline, a notion both were sure the Sorcerer Kingdom wouldn't allow to happen. So, as they both agreed to stay at their father's side, Renner's emotionless face made her seem resolute, while Zenek wasn't so sure that he'd be able to stay unwavering like that. Emotions during a time like this were quite unpredictable.
The people who animated are the same
Fast forward
people
now
that did
to a
Kill
month
la
into the
Kill.
war, and the meeting we see AINZ in was one that he was trying his best in. You see, despite his average mind, which made politics and economics completely incomprehensive to him, the topic of war was something that he could actually follow. That didn't mean that he had given up on any of the other briefs, but since this was one that he thoroughly understood, for once AINZ knew he could at least try to meet the standard his guardians had set out for him. When it came to any of the other fields, though...
Anyways, my boy making all these good comments. Anyways, AINZ is basically playing chess. He's an intelligent, undead person. And basically he got everybody in the palm of his hand. So he's just basically going to the in-depth, but his powers... We can't really scale his power just yet because they haven't really shown AINZ have a really powerful fight. But he's shown to do some incredible feats like bring back the undead. He has healing magic. He can stop time before the fight even starts. He has a ability where he can just grab your heart and just squeeze it and you would just die. And yeah, he's pretty OP. It's kind of like Saitama. If Saitama were to fight him, Saitama would just get obliterated by this dude.
AINZ was actually trying to make himself better at them. He definitely would have preferred to just hand it off to Albedo, but with every guardian always harping on every little word he says, it was only a matter of time until he'd say something which would lead Nazarick towards some incalculable losses. So, the best way to prevent that from ever happening was to eliminate the problem right at the source. And that meant making himself a better person. If the Guardians were always going to seek AINZ's opinion, then AINZ needed to make sure that his opinion was the right one. Thus the reason he was reading all these self-help and business books. It was the least he could do to mitigate the risk that was himself. Now, while AINZ did mention the efforts of Demiurge and Albedo, there wasn't much said about Cocytus's part. You see, as the person in charge of enacting the actual conquest, he was the one who made sure the cities were annihilated to completion, a task that required 0 survivors.
Cocytus is very strong. We just need to see more power. I know the novel shows a lot. I'm gonna watch the novel tomorrow and do a breakdown for that as well tomorrow. Because I know the novel has more information about the power of how strong these guys are. But they're very strong, like OP strong.
Strict policy of sparing no one, it was much less likely that they would have been able to keep their invasion of the Eastern Front secret for so long. So, even with the small number of undead given to active help, Cocytus had successfully made ruin of each and every city that he visited. He had even gone so far as to wipe one out by himself. Of course, given that the person behind him right now was Pistonia, AINZ didn't really feel all that comfortable talking about it. He could only imagine the glare that she was giving him for causing so much death. That said though, because this killing did have an actual purpose to it, AINZ was hoping that she could at least understand why it was necessary. It's not like he gained some sick, twisted pleasure from doing it, but he had no problems killing if it meant it would make Nazarick better. Remember, So long as it was for the direct benefit of Nazarick, there
I'm
was no
texting my
limit
friend,
to
we're
the
talking
number
about
of
the
people
game.
AINZ would kill for it.
He's actually
As for
watching
what
my
all
live
this death
stream
would
right
do to
now.
them here then, well, that ties into AINZ's discussion about failure. If all the lives lost were going to be worth it,
I don't know what I
then
want to play
at
tonight,
least one of his
Valorant or
city
Batman, because I
conquests
gotta upload
needed
a
to end
Batman
with
video
good.
right after I do this
It
reaction
didn't
from
matter
this.
how or what happened, but so long as one of them didn't succeed, the experience gained from it would
I
be
think I'm playing
invaluable.
Valorant first, and then we're gonna
So,
jump on
out of
Batman.
all the things that AINZ had hoped
After I
for in
upload this
war,
Batman
the
video,
thing
and then
he
I gotta
wanted
upload
most
2
right now
Valorant
was to
videos,
be
and then I
for a bit more context as to
You can be confident choosing farm.
no.
not everyone can be like Touch Me and pursue growth even after winning. Sometimes what someone needs to realize their shortcomings is a solid blow. Actually quite comedic. You see, with many of the Soul Eaters falling on rooftops, the resulting impact they made had led them to bounce in each and every direction. They would either land straight through the roof and make a dramatic entrance, or end up bouncing into a spot that they couldn't recover from. So, with an incident rate like that, a few more experiments were needed before this plan could be deemed a success. It did, however, pave the path towards a potential airborne division. As for some of the other plans, there was an interesting one that had 300 Elder Liches carpet bomb with Fireball, then a more covert one that involved the assassination of city leaders. Regardless of what the Floor Guardians did come up with though, the varied approaches to conquests were sure to be educational for everyone. When we get to the meeting with Negretto next, despite the whole encounter being something AINZ didn't really want to do, putting it off would only lead to bigger problems in the future. To him, this was similar to a separate department wanting to have a face-to-face meeting with him. It didn't happen very often, but when it did, it was sure to invite only trouble. Considering this wasn't something that he could put off though, AINZ dismissed his maid and the 8-edged assassins, then proceeded to the Frost prison where he could begin this meeting privately. The maid did try to insist on coming along, but AINZ couldn't risk having this meeting cause trouble in the future. Even with the maid promising not to see or hear anything, the slightest chance of word getting out was something he wanted to avoid. Now, the first thing to note about Negretto is that her apparent affection for any type of baby was nothing more than a superficial facade dictated by her flavor text. Yes, she
like a
did have an
nightmare in
immense
the novel.
soft spot for infants, but the moment those infants turned the age of 2, her love for them
She looked terrifying in that novel.
became practically non-existent. I believe the exact word they used was died. AINZ didn't explain exactly what that meant, but this severe change in attitude was enough to have any children over the age of 2 taken away from her. Like, all the ones who were saved during Yaldabaoth's invasion in Season 2 were transferred to Pistonia the moment they hit that age threshold. As AINZ himself had put it, to keep them with Negretto would just result in her having more meat to process. Now, with regards to Pistonia's plea for mercy, there were quite a few factors that made making a decision extremely difficult. You see, while Pistonia did provide valid reason to let more refugees go, the main problem lay with how the other Guardians would perceive it. It wasn't so much an issue for AINZ himself, but by proceeding with a plan that Albedo and Demiurge had already discarded, their reaction to it would definitely become the main cause for concern here. Despite AINZ having already warned them that he would intentionally make mistakes, should this plan cause the overall one to fail completely, then there was no way he himself could fix it alone. AINZ only wanted to take risks that he could manage himself. So, if this plan would lead to issues that he couldn't resolve on his own, then following through with it could potentially lead to losses that they couldn't recover from. And that was the main thing that AINZ wanted to avoid here. Then, to make things worse, because Pistonia and Negretto had already failed once before, should their plan happen to lead to it once again, then Albedo was sure to insist on their execution even last time. The gap between them and the rest of Nazarick would widen beyond the point of repair. So, when considering all these risks, the most logical solution was to just reject it. The thing is, because there wasn't any significant flaw in the plan Pistonia had mentioned, AINZ couldn't simply dismiss it on the basis that it could fail. He also wouldn't get away with just saying that they were planning to kill only 9% of the population. Not only was that far too flimsy of an excuse, but to reject a plan like this would further discourage valuable minority opinions such as this one. Since Nazarick was planning to incorporate people from the outside world, there would definitely come a time when more opinions like this would arise. So, by having Pistonia and Negretto act on theirs now, the experience gained from it was sure to be helpful in the future. Perhaps he could even put them in charge of managing that new aspect of Nazarick. But yeah, that's pretty much everything we missed up to the fight at the Coast City. Instead of covering that now though, I'm gonna try to include that and the other adventurer stuff in the next video. Until then though, as always, thank you so much for watching, and if you enjoyed this type of anime content, then...
Well, there you have it, boys. Overlord is busted. No, just playing. Yeah, I ain't gonna say he's done like, well, he ain't fought at all. It's really his support in this fight. That's how you know this man is just powerful as fuck. And he's just getting stronger and stronger, and he's just decimating people right now. AINZ is one of my all-time favorite characters right now, because he's just showing so much intelligence and smart as an undead being, and he just doesn't give a care for life whatsoever, and he's just trying to teach his subordinates how to be better and stronger, which is, I love that, dude. I can't stress how much I love this. It's so genius. It might just work. But I'm gonna bring this video to a close. You guys, make sure y'all like and subscribe. Y'all want to see more Overlord content. I've told you guys I'm pumping out videos all this week, man. A lot of videos. Make sure y'all hit that notification bell, subscribe, and drop some comments below for your boy. And I'll see you guys next time.